Todo el mundo es un soñador. Todo el mundo es una estrella. No importa quién tú seas. Hay estrellas en la ciudad, cada casa y cada lugar. Algunos tuvieron éxito. Algunos sufrieron en vano. Yo desearía que mi vida fuera una función interminable de cine, un mundo de villanos y héroes de fantasía, porque los héroes del celuloide realmente nunca mueren.
Hola amigos de Héroes del Celuloide, les saluda Federico Chao. Esta serie tiene la intención de tratar todos los temas relacionados con el cine, como son la historia, las técnicas, las películas más relevantes y los ciclos cinematográficos que actualmente se proyectan en las salas cinematográficas, especialmente en nuestra Cineteca Nacional. Hoy empezaremos una nueva etapa, la historia del cine en sus orígenes. Y nos basaremos en dos historiadores muy famosos, que son Roman Guber y Georges Sadoul. Y tomaremos imágenes que nos ilustren de esta lucha grandiosa que tuvieron estos realizadores. En 1939, Hollywood producía Gunga Din, El Mago de Oz y Lo que el viento se llevó. Pero la gran noticia fue la llegada del joven genio de Nueva York, Orson Welles, que había revolucionado el teatro neoyorquino y había desatado una histeria colectiva con su programa de radio La Guerra de los Mundos. El ciudadano Kane, el gigante frágil.
I made no campaign promises because until a few weeks ago I had no hope of being elected.
Rodada en Hollywood durante los meses de agosto y septiembre y octubre de 1940. Y nos enteramos al mismo tiempo de que este joven había rodado Ciudadano Kane a los 26, la misma edad que tenía Einstein cuando hizo El acorazado Potiomkin.
In Orson Welles, we have a strange life story, one that didn't unfold or develop. He seemed to appear all of a sudden, fully formed and afire. That was illusion, of course, and the maestro of this magic act was Welles. Most of his childhood is a cloud of myth. He was said to have learned magic tricks from Harry Houdini at the age of 5, said to be drinking mixed drinks at age 8, and writing a paper on the universal history of drama, after which in his teens he would take up bullfighting, or so it was said, and read the classics in the palace of the Pasha of Marrakesh.
When you're decreed to be a genius at the age of 3, you become the repository of all kinds of storytelling. Orson himself constantly picked up on these things and accepted them as true.
But Welles seldom talked about the hard central facts. His parents separated by the time he was 6. His mother died when he was 9. His father died from drink 6 years later.
Orson Welles is somebody who essentially didn't have a childhood because both of his parents were dead when he was extremely young. Welles was already off in boarding school, and I don't think there's any question that he was clearly a child prodigy, and not just solely in the area of theater.
I painted and they said nobody's ever seen such painting. I played, nobody's ever played like that. And it just seemed to me no limit to what I could do. I was spoiled in a very strange way as a child because everybody told me from the moment I was able to hear that I was absolutely marvelous. I never heard a discouraging word for years, you see. I didn't know what was ahead of me.
I don't understand you. Mr. Carter, I'm going to live right here in your office as long as I have.
Ciudadano Kane llamó tanto la atención por su insolente juventud, por su mentalidad europea de Orson Welles, que se traslucía claramente. Welles tiene un conocimiento precoz e intenso de Shakespeare.
Wells arrived in New York in his late teens with one colossal idea. He was going to present history's greatest plays and stage them for the common man. He was going to revolutionize the theater. He was much talked about from the first. One actor described his first sight of Wells, a preposterous energy pulsating through everything he did. There was also talk about his off-stage debauches. That only added to his reputation. Orson meant to shock. Wells' big break was on a scheme as improbable as he was. The Federal Theater Project was a part of the WPA, a Depression jobs program, with a fraction for the arts, which was why 137 unemployed black actors and stagehands were supposed to put on Shakespeare, Macbeth, in Harlem. In the leftist climate of the theater world, art was supposed to be the property of the masses. But this was radical. All the better for Wells.
Orson was a young white guy. Took off his coat, stood in front of me, and said, "Just read for me. You don't have to do anything special, just read it." And if you could read it, he'd listen again and say, "Well, yeah, I can do something with that."
It was really ridiculous in a couple of instances because there was no way possible some of these souls were going to be able to read Shakespeare. But read they had to because they were told to read, and that was $21.86 a week.
This guy had just barely turned 20 years old when he entered into this production. It opened before he turned 21. Here he's dealing with a cast of 80 to 100 people, seven or eight of which have professional experience. The vast majority of them have never been on a stage before, okay? And they're entrusting their entire life to this kid who has never directed anything, anywhere but at school.
He knew what he wanted, and he was darn sure he was going to get it, one way or the other. If it took somebody's life, that was tough. You know, he cracked a whip, he abused people, he yelled and screamed. I never saw him physically assault anybody, but he always seemed capable of it.
Wells kept rehearsing till dawn, bellowing orders at his huge cast. He was turning Macbeth into spectacle, a pop thriller set in Haiti, Voodoo Macbeth. He was legend in Harlem even before dress rehearsal. The Communist Party started a rumor that Wells was really staging a mockery, a minstrel show. 4 men attacked him one night outside the theater. After that, he worked flanked by bodyguards. But Wells and his partner, the producer John Houseman, rallied Harlem to their cause. On opening night, public officials arrived to show support. A brass band paraded in uniforms of light blue, scarlet, and gold. Traffic around the Lafayette Theater was backed up for an hour.
Ring the alarm bell! Low, in! Come, right!
These people had never done Shakespeare before, but with Orson back of them, Orson could take them and change them into whatever he wanted.
Orson's artistic ambition.
He felt that if he could do this with a group of black actors who were not versed in Shakespeare, what could he not do?
Play on, Macduff! Let them be he who first cries, "Hold enough!"
You can see just how this whole thing was choreographed. Every step is meticulously done. It looks like chaos, but it was very, very carefully contrived chaos.
And be these juggling fiends no more believed.
The way he developed in those performers a sense of the performer's dignity and respect for himself. Orson somehow got those people to play those roles as though they'd been preparing for them all their lives.
I think it's a great success in my life. Everybody who was anybody in the black or white world was there. And when the play ended, there were so many curtain calls that finally they left this curtain open and the audience came up on the stage to congratulate the actors. That was magical.
Charles, looky, Mom! Better come inside, son.
Well, that's quite a snowman.
Es película total, psicológica, social, poética, dramática, cómica, barroca. Ciudadano Kane es al mismo tiempo una demostración de la voluntad del poder y una ridiculización de esa voluntad del poder en un himno de juventud y una meditación sobre la vejez, un ensayo sobre la vanidad, sobre la decrepitud y sobre la soledad monstruosamente geniales. Ciudadano Kane es experimental por su visión global del mundo. Orson Welles, incluso antes de comenzar Ciudadano Kane, era conocido en toda América y no solamente por su emisión radiofónica sobre los marcianos.
Do you want me to speak now? I'm sorry. Of course, we are deeply shocked and deeply regretful about the results of last night's broadcast. It came rather as a great surprise to us that a story, the fine H.G. Wells classic.
We absolutely were not prepared for the kind of reaction it got. But Orson, giving an interview, he said, I had no idea what we were going to do. That's not true. He knew 15 minutes in, when David Taylor came out and said, make an announcement. He wouldn't.
Were you aware of terror at the time you were giving this role? Were you aware that terror was going on throughout the nation?
Oh, no, of course not. I was, frankly, terribly shocked to learn that it did.
Y los periódicos profesionales de Hollywood titulaban las noticias del rodaje con un irónico silencio. Un genio está trabajando. Para hacer una buena película basta con tener inteligencia, sensibilidad, intuición y unas cuantas ideas. Orson Welles tenía todo. Esto para dar y para vender.
Good evening, Mr. Kane. There is a man. A certain man. And for the poor, you may be sure that he'll do all he can. Who is this one? His favorite son. Just by his action has the traction magnets on the run.
Antes de Ciudadano Kane, nadie en Hollywood sabía utilizar bien la música. Desde este punto de vista, Ciudadano Kane viene a ser la primera y únicamente película radiofónica.
Kane's empire in its glory held dominion over 37 newspapers, 2 syndicates, a radio network, an empire upon an empire. Hey, Mr. Kane, I'm from the Enquirer.
En el trasfondo de cada secuencia hay una idea sonora que le da tono. La lluvia, las claraboyas en el Carabet, los ecos sobre los mármoles de la biblioteca. No es exagerado, pues, afirmar que Orson Welles es el único temperamento visual que ha surgido en el cine tras la aparición del cine sonoro. Orson Welles es el que, contra toda costumbre, libra a la cámara de su posición horizontal, de forma tal que la perspectiva óptica cambia y parece que la Tierra se inclina ante el protagonista.
I never saw anybody more focused. He knew exactly what he wanted, and he and Greg Tolan were on a completely single wavelength. I'll never forget the day I came in and They had sawed a hole out of the board floor, which you could do, and they were both on their hands and knees throwing out the dirt like children in a sandbox.
He was totally absorbed in himself and the picture and what he was doing. But you couldn't look at those rushes coming in every day, those films shot the day before, without realizing you were getting something quite extraordinary. The photography and the angles and the shooting. It was marvelous. It was just marvelous.
Here he was at RKO with his carte blanche deal, and he would not let the executives of that studio come anywhere near the set. They came in, and Orson said, "Who's got a baseball? Let's play some catch." So everybody started playing catch. But of course, it drove the brass absolutely loony.
With his soundstage closed, with control over everything on his set, Wells thought at last he had his project in hand. Nothing stopped him. After one fall down a flight of steps, he acted in steel ankle braces and directed from a wheelchair. He still said he hated Hollywood, but at the studio he'd found the biggest magic kid on earth. But Wells had one problem he couldn't control.
Can't ever give me anything I really care about.
El denominador común en todos los films de Wells es el liberalismo, la afirmación de que el conservadurismo es un error.
No Hearst newspaper ever published a review. No Hearst newspaper ever published an ad. The orders came from San Simeon that there was to be no advertising accepted for that movie.
On behalf of the New York Film Critics, I'm very happy to present to you these awards for Orson Welles' production of Citizen Kane as the best picture of 1941.
The film came out, as you know, won every award in New York and everything, and immediately there was a blackout. They really wanted to destroy it and destroy him.
Hollywood honors its own at the Motion Picture Academy Award dinner. There are glamorous Rosalind Russell and Cary Grant.
Orson Welles had one last shot at vindication, the Academy Awards for 1941.
Now the presentations they're all waiting for. Ginger Rogers makes the presentation for Best Actress of 1941. The winner, Joan Fontaine.
Citizen Kane had 9 nominations, and Welles personally was nominated for 4. Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, and with Mankiewicz, Best Screenplay.
I went to the Academy Awards in '41 because I was one of the 9 nominations that the picture got. And I'll never forget that evening because first time that Kane was mentioned as one of the nominees for whatever it was, I can't remember what category now, there were a certain number of very noticeable boos from the audience. And then other people there shushed him down. And we went on for another category or two, and the second time that Kane came up was announced as whoever nominated from Citizen Kane, more boos.
The voters of the Academy would grant Citizen Kane only one award, for the screenplay. That vote was really for Mank. Orson Welles lost for Best Picture, Best Actor, and Best Director. Kane lost for cinematography, editing, lighting, music, sound, art direction, after which RKO retired the film to its vault.
It can't be love.
Los frágiles gigantes que ocupan el centro de sus fábulas crueles descubren que no pueden conservar nada, ni la juventud, ni el poder, ni el amor.
In fact, there is only one winner in the story of Citizen Kane, and that's the film, which couldn't be killed.
It didn't come back into public consciousness until about the mid-50s. Then it began to appear on international lists of the greatest films ever made. I think that started in about the early 60s. It's not like any movie made at that time. It was very much ahead of its time. In fact, you could say it was, 40 years ahead of its time.
Kane was also 40 years ahead of its time in its portrayal, not of Hearst, but of the man who made it. It was Wells who lived out his life in isolation.
Well, I've thought often afterwards, only in recent years when I saw the film again 2 or 3 years ago when they had the 50th anniversary, and I suddenly thought to myself, well, Orson was doing an autobiographical film and didn't realize it, because it's rather much the same, You start here and you have a big rise in tremendous prominence and fame and success and whatnot, and then tail off and tail off and tail off. And at least the arc of the two lives were very much the same.
In latter years, Wells was a vagabond, trying to patch together his low-budget films.
Orson used to tell the story that Billy Rose, the entrepreneur, saw Citizen Kane, and when he saw Orson afterwards said, "Quit, kid. You'll never top it. Quit while you're ahead." And Orson said, maybe he was right.
I think I made essentially a mistake in staying in movies, but it's the mistake I can't regret, because it's like saying I shouldn't have stayed married to that woman, but I did because I love her. I would have been more successful if I'd left movies immediately, stayed in the theater, gone into politics, written anything. I've wasted the greater part of my life looking for money and trying to get along, trying to make my work from this terribly expensive paint box, which is a movie. And I've spent too much energy on things that have nothing to do with making a movie. It's about 2% movie making and 98% hustling. It's no way to spend a life.
Amigos de Héroes del Celuloide, qué gran película es El Ciudadano Kane. Yo me pregunto, ¿qué hubiera pasado si no hubiera tenido tantos problemas para su exhibición y si se le hubiera permitido seguir su carrera con ese gran genio que tenía? ¿Hubiera hecho otros Ciudadanos Kane con esa genialidad o más probablemente? No lo sabemos. Bueno, amigos, nos vemos en la próxima película.
Everybody's a dreamer, and everybody's a star, and everybody's in movies. It doesn't matter who you are. There are stars in every city, in every house and on every street. And if you walk down Hollywood Boulevard, their names are written in concrete. Don't tread on Greta Garbo as she walks down the boulevard. She looks so weak and fragile, that's why she tries to be so hard. But they turned her into a princess, and they sat her on the throne. But she turned her back on stardom because she wanted